also wear face covering to protect your employees. In this order, it provides a business owner or operator the right to refuse admission or service to any individual who fails to wear face covering. As part of the emergency response to COVID-19, all metered parking spaces in Glendale are free for the first 20 minutes to facilitate delivery and pickup of food from restaurants. Glendale Water and Power is offering payment extension and will not disconnect service for those who are not able to pay due to COVID-19. Late fees will also be waived, and they are offering to those who can't $150 we will put in their account. We are always updating our website with the latest information on ways to protect yourself and support small businesses, as well as the latest number of cases and more. The City of Glendale Economic Development Team is continuously providing accurate and timely business-specific information, and we continue to do so through the weekly newsletter and business resources page on the city's website, glendale.california.gov. We will get through this crisis as we went through other crises, yet the pains so many business owners and employees are suffering right now is real and very scary. I own a small business. I can imagine what others are going through. My hope is that the upcoming information will help you and me find a path to survive the coming months and thrive on the other side. We will do what we can to help. Thank you for listening.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Now I'd like to turn it over to the Small Business Development Center. I see that we already have questions that are coming in. And again, I know there have been many changes, even in the last few hours. So Don Lowell with the Sbdc, please take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Mayor, and also thank you to the chambers and to the Job Center for having us. And I'm going to ask real quick if you can see my screen and hear me.
Yes, yes, we can see your screen and hear you.
Thank you. So again, thank you for quite a few changes in the last 12 hours. But in general, I just want to start by, again, saying thanks for having us. Our goal for this presentation is to provide an overview of information on the two primary loan products. Also bring you up to speed on some new things that happened as early as last night. And then the primary goal is to answer as many questions as we can. And we're going to do that a couple different ways. First of all, through the chat. All of your questions should go into the chat. And while I'm running through some slides, my colleague, Larry Johnson, is going to answer as many of those as he can. And then at the end, we will continue to do that. And we'll also read some of the more common questions. And then finally, we will post that chat and provide it to Jennifer so that you all can refer back to it as well. So that's the agenda. Let's jump right into it. I'm Don Lowell. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center at PCC. And there are 1,100 roughly small business centers, small business development centers across the country. And we are a resource partner of the SBA. We have sister organizations that I'm sure you're familiar with, those being SCORE, or the Women's Business Center, or the Veterans Business Center as well. We all work together to support the SBA and their programs. And subsequently, as you can imagine, we've been awfully busy the last 2 to 3 weeks. What do we do at the Sbdc? We provide face-to-face, one-on-one counseling and advice for small business owners. And we're now doing that obviously over Zoom, but we have at PCC, I have 13 advisors that provide support for small businesses, ranging anywhere from loan support, which has been the primary so far the last 3 weeks, but we also do strategic planning, marketing, website development, social media. We can help you get through this loan process. We can also help you develop plans on the other side for you to come out on the other side of this crisis. And we're there for you if you need us and would like to take advantage. This presentation is going to cover the EIDL loan, economic injury disaster, the Paycheck Protection, and then I'll make a quick comment at the end about the Express Bridge loan and debt relief. Again, folks, a lot of this information is redundant for you, so I'm going to go through it briskly. Please put any questions you may have in the chat. So real quick background, the EIDL loan was launched almost 3 weeks ago. That's a disaster loan. Those funds are provided directly from the US Treasury through the SBA. And those funds and that application, for many of you who've already filled it out, you know it's about your operating expenses. The Paycheck Protection Program launched on the 3rd, and then again last Friday for independent contractors. And that program is all about payroll replacement, and thus its name, Paycheck Protection. Those funds, those funds come through independent lenders, SBA lenders, and you would apply with your, typically your business bank for those funds. Now, I'm sure many of you know, but as of last night, both of those programs are on hold for new applications because the $349 billion that was initially allocated as part of the CARES Act has been exhausted. Those of you who have applications in process, you're still in the queue. Those of you who've already been approved should get funded without any problem. I can't say this for sure, but pretty confident that Congress will appropriate more money for both of these programs. And as Jennifer said, questions, input should be directed to your congressional folks about that. I think now is the time to look them up on your speed dial and to touch base with those folks about these programs. And again, I'm pretty confident they will continue to fund these. Well, we know they were debating a $250 billion package. So these should be reopened and you will be able to apply for them. So the EIDL loan, again, working capital, it's a loan that you can get up to $2 million at 3.75% for 30 years, and the payments are deferred for a year. Note that the interest is still going to accrue. That application is going to ask you for input on your cost of goods and your operating expenses. You must meet the SBA requirements for size, which is under 500 employees. Any organization may apply, including nonprofits, 501c, D, and E included. Ineligible businesses would be illegal and or gambling concerns, a very typical list. This is a loan, and as is all of them, that you'll need to qualify for, and they will pull your credit report. They're going to look at your score and your history to make a determination about this loan for you. Anyone with more than 20% ownership needs to provide information. You will not need a guarantee up to $200,000. You will need collateral above $25,000, but it's not required to get the loan. So you will not need collateral for the entire amount of the loan. If you have it, they will definitely attach it, but it won't knock you out. Here's the most recent link to apply. Again, by now, I would imagine most of you have applied. You may still apply on paper. You can FedEx an application that is down here below. But this is the portal you'll want to go to, and this will be the first page of that application. Again, this is directly with the SBA. It's a pretty simple application, and you have through the end of the year to apply. Keeping in mind when funds eventually run out, that'll be the end of the program. The EIDL advance, some folks refer to this as a grant. It is forgivable in many situations, but it's not a grant. It's an advance on the EIDL loan. This week we learned that the way they're calculating this is based on the number of employees, roughly $1,000 per employee. And this money, to be eligible, you need to check this box and tell them you'd like to be considered. You'll provide your banking information, and when they approve you for this, understand that more than likely you will not hear from them. It'll just be deposited into your bank account. The intent here was to provide funds within 3 days. I can tell you that has not been happening, but it is catching up quite a bit, and we have several clients who've received an EIDL advance. If you are declined for the EIDL loan, the advance, any advance that you get will be forgiven. Okay. By now, most of you are probably already aware of this, but I'll let you know, if you applied for an EIDL before March 30th, you need to reapply. And how do I know if I have the most recent? Your confirmation number will start with a 3 if you've applied since March 30th. Paycheck Protection, again, this is designed to help you keep your employees on the job. It's going to look at your payroll, everything associated with payroll, including benefits. It's up to $10 million at 1%. Notice this is only a 2-year loan, and that's because these funds are to be focused on an 8-week period, and we'll talk about that as well. These are also deferred. Payments on this are deferred for 6 months. If these funds, or when these funds are used on allowable expenses, it will be forgiven. You'll apply to have this loan forgiven. Very similar eligibility. However, one note, as you're counting your employees and you're calculating your payroll, you will not include your independent contractors. You will not include funds that you spend on 1099 employees. Those folks, self-employed and IDCs, may apply on their own. We'll talk about that a little bit because we do have some new information on that. Again, for a Paycheck Protection loan, you're going to need a lending partner. We recommend you start with your business bank. Again, many of you now know that some of those banks were requiring you to have either a current loan or certainly an account. Some banks like Wells Fargo had to take a pause, and then Wells has come back online for this loan. This, just to take a second and share some more, this is a huge program. It's a national disaster, not just a regional one. And so the lending partners of the SBA have been coming up to speed over the last week and a half now, trying to implement this program. I can tell you that every single day, it gets better. They become more responsive, more lenders come online. And next week, again, it will be even better. So it's hard to be patient, but I would encourage you to do that because these programs, every day we learn more and every day they become more accessible. You will not need any guarantee or collateral for a Paycheck Protection loan. Again, you'll need a lending partner, an application, your payroll documentation. Independent contractors, you'll need your 1040 Schedule C. And if you have employees, a 941. The independent contractor program launched on Friday, and we just got some additional guidance about that last night. In particular, they're going to ask you to go to your Schedule C and look at your net income to determine your payroll. If you have employees, you'll use your 941 as well. This is linked to the SBA search for approved lenders. Again, this is going to be a more traditional application for a loan. Most banks are doing it online, but this is a picture of the application you'll be filling out. This deadline is June 30th. This program, again, a very short period of time to put folks back to work, to help support you putting your employees back to work. So Paycheck Protection, how are we going to calculate the amount of the loan? On the right, talks about what's included. Payroll includes salaries, wages, benefits. For independent contractors, it will include draws and distributions, we've been told, which is great. They're going to take an average monthly amount, multiply it by 2.5, and come up with a loan amount. It's an amount for 8 weeks of payroll. Note that when you're calculating your payroll, you're going to want to cap the salary at 100,000. Well, excuse me, the wages in general at 100,000 per employee. So if you had someone making more than that, you would cap that at 100 for your calculation. Seasonal businesses are going to look at this 8-week period, or they may look at this 8-week period between February and June of 2019 to get an average. That's more than 8 weeks, but that period is the seasonal calculation. Same slide, but looking at sole proprietors. And again, this came down last night. If you have employees, you're going to use your 1040 Schedule C, as well as the 1040 Schedule C line 14, your employer health insurance contributions and your retirement contributions are going to go into that calculation. Again, for independent contractors. If you don't have employees, you're going to focus just on the net profit from that Schedule C. And note these asterisks here at the bottom. One of the comments in the guidance pointed out that even if you haven't filed yet your 2019 taxes, they'll want you to fill that out and estimate it. Most of you probably already have that done, but they are looking at 2019. And it's okay if you haven't filed the taxes yet. This is a quick calculation, simply dividing by 12, multiplying by 2.5 to get a loan max. And then forgiveness, the most important part. So Paycheck Protection loans will be forgiven if you spend them on allowable expenses. And those are payroll, rent, and utilities, as well as interest on business mortgage. Your lender will provide detail in terms of those and how you'll document that. But the key thing you want to keep in mind is at least 75% of that must be spent on payroll. The other 25 may be spent on rent and utilities. You can spend all of it on payroll if you'd like, but at least 75% must be spent on payroll for the funds to be forgiven. Over here on the left, what if you have a reduction in employees? Then you'll have a reduction in forgiveness. So to make it really simple, the number of employees you use for the calculation must be the number of employees and the cost, the expense during the 8-week period following the loan to be eligible for forgiveness. And you'll have 8 weeks following the loan origination to spend those funds. Those are the key parts. You're going to spend Paycheck Protection funds for the 8 weeks following the origination of the loan. And you'll spend at least 75% on payroll, equal to the calculation you made to come up with the loan amount. You'll be able to get it forgiven. Really quick on a couple of other programs. These are for those of you who already have a federal loan. Maybe you have a 7A or 504, maybe a guaranteed student loan or an FHA loan. And if you do, by now you probably are already aware of this, but the SBA is going to make the next 6 payments on those loans for you. You don't need to apply. They're just going to do it. If you already made a payment, you'll get an option to apply it to the loan amount or to have it sent back to you. And again, by now, most of you who have these loans should be aware of this, but if not, just a heads up, part of the CARES Act is this debt relief program. They're going to make those 6 months of payments for you. And that was it. Again, we are the Sbdc. There are 9 of us throughout LA and Ventura County. We have one downtown at Bixel Exchange. PCR is on Wilshire. College of the Canyons has a great Sbdc. And we all work really well together. If you came to my Sbdc and you needed skills that we didn't have, we'd look throughout the network and we'd find you advisors to support you. And the best way to reach us, honestly, is via email at sbdc@pasadena.edu. You can also check out our website. And with that, I will take a breath and ask Jennifer, is there anything I missed there, or Larry?
Don, I think it's important that we emphasize to everyone 2 things. Both programs have been suspended for the time being. With the EIDL program, any applications that were in-house up until the date of the suspension, and that was last evening around midnight, those applications will continue to be processed until every dollar that was allocated to the program is exhausted. So if you had applied, there's a chance that you may get funded, but there's no guarantee. Secondly, for PPP funds, those funds are gotten through an application directly to your bank or financial institution. If you have applied with them, and as of midnight, the bank had processed your application, the SBA had received it and approved it, you will be funded. However, if everything was still in motion, as of midnight, everything stopped. So the odds are you will have to wait on both programs until Congress acts, and that is in the hands of our congressional representatives. And I understand that they do listen to constituents.
They really do.
Great. So if I can just jump in here, it looks like we have many questions that have come in through the group chat, and I was hoping, Sbdc, that I see that you've been responding to some of those, but I was hoping that you can also go through those questions directly for the small businesses that are on the call today.
Sure. Happy to do that. Don, I think it'd be helpful if you would provide and say once more for the folks on the line how solopreneurs and owners, LLC owners and S Corp owners who have no employees still can apply for PPP.
Yes, I see that on several questions, and you absolutely are eligible for that loan. The question then becomes, what data do you use to make that calculation? And you're going to, the direction, the guidance we've been given is that you'll go to your 1040 Schedule C and use your net income for the previous 12 months, or from that Schedule C, which would be from 2019. So that's the most direct answer we've been given, is they're going to look at net income, which should include any amounts you've paid yourself, as well as draws and distributions would be in that calculation.
And you divide that by, you multiply that, divide by 12 and multiply the result by 2.5.
Correct. And someone asked a question, Sarkis, I apologize, I wasn't clear. It's going to be 2.5 times your monthly average. So you'll take that annual net income, divide it by 12 to get a monthly amount, and multiply it by 2.5 to get the loan amount, up to 10 million. And again, within that net income, if you pay yourself more than $100,000, you need to back that out.
Back out the amount that puts you
Above,
over 100.
Correct. Back out the amount above 100,000.
One applicant, one guest in the audience wanted to have the information about reapplying for EIDL repeated, and I'll do it in different, using different terms. If you applied before March 30th, you applied at a portal that was deemed to be faulty. There was, first of all, it required a lot of information that wasn't essential for the SBA to review your application. And applications got hung up in the process. It required you to upload lots of information. So it was determined that they should scrap that portal and install a new one. They went outside and got a private firm who came in with a new revamped application process and application questions that were more efficient and quickly and could quickly be gone through. That was installed, but it required that anyone who applied before that date had to reapply. Now, you know, if you got an old portal, you went through the old portal, if your confirmation number begins with something other than a 3, that means you went through the old portal. If it begins with 3, it means you got a confirmation number from the proper portal and you're in. But also another check is that in the new portal, at the end of applying, there's a question where you check a box saying that you want to be considered for an up to $10,000 cash advance. So I think that should hopefully be clear.
We are also getting a few questions about LLCs, which was in the guidance last night. And the comment that was made, you're certainly eligible as partners. You'd want to apply, required to apply as one entity. That was
yeah, that's a very important point, Don, because many LLCs have multiple partners, Each partner cannot apply separately. You must apply as one entity. You must choose one of the partners to be the lead, and then you can work out what the intramural responsibilities would be going forward in terms of obligations, but only the entity is qualified.
Correct.
Larry, there's a question about for those approved for PPP, do you have to have the same employee count at the end of the measuring period as you did prior?
So you've got 2 months to ramp up and spend the money and bring employees back. And you are measured at the end of that 2-month period. Now, it is assumed by the SBA in their inimitable wisdom that 2-month period a drop dead date for that 2-month period is June 30th. So that assumes that they will have all the funding completed by April 30th. Well, let's see, we are now almost there, and there are quite a few fundings yet to happen. There is the possibility that date will move, but right now we've got 2 measuring points. We've got 2 months subsequent to funding. That could, and a maximum end date of June 30. There is a chance that that the funding might not occur until sometime in May. So that would put pressure on that June 30th date.
And then just to confirm, if the EIDL application number begins with a 3, they do not need to reapply, correct?
Right, that's right.
There was also a question about changing from sole proprietor to an S corp. Are you still eligible? Yes, you'd be eligible. The question will be, how do you calculate that payroll amount? And so you may, I would, unless Larry knows differently, I'd refer you to your lender to get some direction on, do you use a blended net income? They can help direct you.
Yeah, that's right, Donna. Many of the fine points of this, it's an interpretation point, and you should discuss with your lender. And if you're not happy with the response you get from your lender, you can always request that the lender go to the regional SBA office for further guidance. Because in many situations, the lender may not be up on the latest information and guidance from the SBA. Unfortunately, this is not all cast in concrete 100%, and many things are left to interpretation. And so we want to make sure everyone recognizes that they have opportunities to appeal and ask for additional guidance.
And is it true that you needed to be in business as of February 15th?
Yes.
Correct.
Because this is really measuring the impact of the disaster on your business. So if you were not in business during the beginning of the disaster, it's difficult to say that you were impacted. A lot of the impact of the disaster even preceded February 15th. Many people started to see an impact as far back as January.
At least, and that's how Congress is defining it, even though we continue to be impacted and will be for quite some time. But that's, for now, how Congress has defined it.
Yes.
So there are 2 questions here that I want to get to. One's on a combination of the loans. We should talk a little bit about that. And then there's a question about the bridge loan. So don't let me forget, but let's start with how the 2 loans work together. And I'll give you my thoughts, and Larry, you'll clean it up for me as always. So first of all, you may apply for both loans. And I'm encouraging all of our clients to do that. One of them will not preclude you from getting the other and vice versa. However, what you need to understand is related to the forgiveness, you may not double dip, if you will, on the forgiveness. So what does that mean? Let's say you got an EIDL loan before the PPP loan, which is pretty typical. It came out first. If you spend some of your EIDL funds on payroll, it may be forgiven, but it will need to be refied or merged into the Paycheck Protection loan. And so some of you should see there are questions or calculations that are putting the EIDL proceeds into the PPP. And that is for instances where you've spent EIDL on payroll. If you've done that, you need to refi that into your Paycheck Protection loan. The good news is when you do that, those funds all become forgiven. Now we have clients that like that, are excited about that, and other clients that, 3.75 for 30 years, it's really inexpensive money. And they take that, they're going to use those funds on maybe some other things. Other folks want to get as much forgiveness as they can, loan forgiveness. And so that's one way that those two loans work together. And so when you're filling out your app for Paycheck Protection and it asks you about other loans or disaster loan, that's what it's getting at. And again, always refer you to your lender for clarification. It's your lender who's going to process your application for the proceeds to be forgiven. So they are the folks at the end of the day that you really want to get direction from. But that's a little bit about how EIDL and PPP work together. Larry?
That was perfectly clear. There is a question I want to get to before we get to the bridge loan. Someone is asking, will federal tax refund checks be delayed due to the mailing out of all of the stimulus checks? I don't have a direct answer to that, but I think that there's a lot going on, and you can assume that anything that would normally happen will be subject to the volume of activity that's occurring. So, but there's definitely a sense of urgency in Washington, D.C. to get money to people as quickly as possible. And so they're doing everything humanly possible to make that happen. Now, the bridge loan, Don.
Sure. So there is an SBA Express Bridge loan. That's what I have some info on, and I'll talk about. Also a program for folks who already have a federal loan. So if you had a 504 loan with the SBA, you could go to your lender and apply for an express bridge loan. And it's just that, it's an express application and approval process. And I believe it's up to $25,000. And it's another way that the SBA is trying to help its current customers, current businesses with a federal loan, to make $25,000 available for you as quickly as they can. That's the SBA Express Bridge loan.
But you should emphasize, Don, we have to make sure everyone understands that that is not for people who don't have an existing SBA loan relationship.
Correct. Correct.
For the SBDC team, one of the questions and some of the reports we've been getting is that there are so many businesses who have not yet received their loans. Can you provide hopefully some sort of optimism about whether California businesses are in fact receiving some of these SBA loans, and what some of the average wait time is before they receive the funds?
Sure. So let me start with the first part of that. I saw a report yesterday that showed the proceeds by state, and California is second in the nation at just over $22 billion of the 349. So we, as could be expected with such a significant economy and such great businesses, we're getting our unfair share or fair share of those funds. Now, obviously, it's just starting to really impact us, and we need a lot more. But as a state, we're getting a very large number of those funds. As far as wait time, what I would say to that is what I had mentioned earlier, Jennifer, which is every day gets a little bit better, meaning they process more applications, they approve more applications, they disperse more money. Yes, we've got a hold right now, but that'll cause a delay, but it's going to pick up again, and every day gets better. Now, having said all that, I can't really guesstimate, how long it will take an individual business, but what we've seen is typically 4 to 5 weeks for folks to get funded. As soon as I say that, someone will get funded in 2 weeks. I heard Wednesday or Tuesday of this week, all of a sudden a bunch of PPP loans got funded, and it's only been 10 days since.
It might depend on the lender too.
Of course it does. There are all kinds of factors.
It depends on the lender and also the nature of the business, right? Certain businesses are easily understood. If you've got a restaurant business and certain set of employees, you've got a good grasp on what your sales and cost of goods sold are. Your bank knows who you are. You have a relationship with that bank. So the approval process can be extremely fast. But if you're going to a financial institution that doesn't know you, they've got to do the basic diligence to get to know you, and that adds some extra time.
Great. Well, this has been really good information.
I have 2 businesses and own 100% on each.
Well, one of the things while we're looking through the list, I'll let you know that we recognize that information will continue to come out in dribs and drabs, and we will make sure that we stay in close contact with the city officials so that the city can help us get the information out to everyone who's on the call. We are very pleased with our relationship with the city of Glendale, and we want to make sure that everyone is properly serviced and provided with the most up-to-date information to take advantage of any funds that are available. One of the questions, Don, I think that we should address is what else is there for the folks on the line who are in need of capital, and there are a few programs that you might want to consider. I know that there have been what I would call a few entrants. The county of Los Angeles has attempted to come in with a couple programs. They have not been funded as well as one would want, and they quickly were depleted. but there is one of the CDC lenders, CDC Small Business Finance, is leading the effort with a loan program for those folks who don't get into PPP, up to $150,000, and you can apply directly to the CDC website, which I have on my phone someplace, and I'll get that to you shortly.
I know while you're doing that, the state of California, their iBank program, you can go to the state of California website. I will say that I'm hearing that they're still bringing lenders online for that. But I know this, in addition to the county, the state is trying to help as well. Now, another couple of questions that came up that I wanted to address. I have two businesses and own 100% on each. Would they approve it based on the business or the owner? And the answer to that is related to how you've formulated the businesses. If they're separate with separate tax returns, then I would apply for both. It's not the owner, it's the entity. I have one part-time employee, but it needs to be, in order to apply, I need a full-time. No, that they will count part-time, not 1099 though. So when you say part-time, that if it's an independent contractor, they won't count those in a Paycheck Protection loan, but it doesn't need to be 40 hours a week full-time employee.
Don, we have a question about a business that can't open, and then if they get PPP, are they supposed to pay employees who are currently furloughed but not working? The assumption in this program is that within the 2-week period subsequent to funding, that we will be in a better position. And the assumption is that you will be able to bring people back in some fashion or form to the extent that you would get funding for PPP. If that is something that you are uncomfortable with and you are funded, you don't necessarily have to use and take the funds if you don't want them. But that's a decision you have to make, whether you want to pay people who aren't going to work. Maybe it's an important opportunity for you, especially if you're going to get that 100% forgiven. It may be a goodwill offering to your employees to keep them interested and happy that you're going to, at least for that 2-week period. But the assumption in the program is that we're not going to be in this condition forever, and it is going to change. As you know, the president is looking at and going to be issuing information regarding opening for some areas as early as May. I think even though the state of California has not agreed to do that, imagine a scenario when other parts of the country are opening, the pressure, both economic, political pressure that will be put on leaders in the parts of the country that are not open. And again, we've got a huge economy. People want to get back to work. There are lots of entrepreneurs who are thinking of ways to make it happen safely. I've been working with a restaurant group on the West Side and in the South Bay on coming up with ideas and options to make restaurants and operating restaurants even more safe in a new environment. So I think that I'd like to make some positive statements that I foresee us coming up as a population with procedures and processes that will allow us to open sooner rather than later and in a very safe way.
Here's a question about can I apply for unemployment until my PPP is funded? Yes, you can. Unemployment does not preclude you from getting a Paycheck Protection loan, and getting a loan will not cause any problem for you with the unemployment. Now, having said that, unemployment insurance requires you every week to report a survey every week or every 2 weeks of the money that you made in your, well, the money that you were able to make, and they will then offset those unemployment benefits. So when you get the loan, you're going to use that money to pay your employees, yourself included. You wouldn't double dip on unemployment insurance.
There's a very good question with regards to someone who converted a 1099 independent contractor to an employee due to AB5 earlier this year. And they wanted to know if they can still pay that employee even if he was a 1099 in 2019. You can pay any employee who is a real W-2 employee currently, whether it's someone that you bring in today or someone that was a 1099 before and you've converted them. You are measuring the payroll that is made subsequent to the funding of the loan. So whether this person was a 1099 in 2019, you're paying that person as a W-2, and that person will be counted as a W-2 employee for purposes of the measurement, and that payroll will be counted as for purposes of the measurement in 2020.
And then going back to bringing them employees back on, this may be redundant, but the direction we have is by June 30th. So if you've laid off employees and you get a Paycheck Protection loan, you need to bring them back by the 30th of June for it to count as forgivable. You don't need to bring this, I did read, you don't need to bring the exact same employees back, but you need to spend the money, and the way I look at it is in the same proportion as you applied for it. If you said my payroll was $100,000 a month, that's what you need to spend at that same pace to expect to get those proceeds forgiven. When in doubt, kind of apply some common sense to it. They loan me the money based on this, that's what I've got to spend it on. If I don't, it may not be forgiven. Keeping in mind that 75%, 25% rule that I shared.
Right. Someone asked a question who was an officer for a corporation and they're currently not working. You do qualify to apply for unemployment if you're not working. So please take advantage of that. With regards to the stay-at-home requirement and whether or not that's going to be extended beyond May 15th, and whether or not there will be programs for small business, I think the reality is we've got a complex equation here. There's a limit to how much both either the state or the federal government can afford to write checks. And at some point, our governments, both federal and state, have to recognize that we can't be in this limbo situation forever. And they're going to have to come up with a solution because having bailouts that continue ad infinitum is not going to work for any of us. So I'm confident that our leaders are going to put their heads together in the next few weeks to come up with a program that will benefit us all. And we won't need continual bailouts going through the end of the year. If you're a sole proprietor, can you hire your husband or son as employees since your employees are unemployment and don't want to return to work? You know, I've seen that issue arise, that employees are happy making unemployment. It's unfortunate. It's fairly short-sighted of an employee to take advantage of that and forego a more permanent job. That was one of the discussions in Congress before this was approved. But the reality is, indeed, if your husband and son are actually doing work and they're just not on the payroll, I think you've got every reason to be able to hire them and pay them accordingly.
There's a question here about, do the employees have to clock in? Which also I think intersects with some questions about how do we prove it? How do we apply? What are they going to require? So first answer is the same one I'm going to give on that all the time, which is see your lender. They're the folks you're going to apply to for forgiveness. You want to make sure you clearly understand what those parameters are and how you're going to be expected to submit proof of that. I don't believe clocking in is necessarily required. It's more about proof that you paid them. So any statements, whether they're bank statements or they're anything that you might be able to use to show that during this 8-week period, from the time I got the loan, 8 weeks out, I spent this money on these things.
That's absolutely right, Don.
Accurate.
Absolutely right. They're not going, the banks are not going,
far.
and neither will the SBA reach in to look at your detailed business operations. They only want to see proof that the money was used for appropriate purposes.
SBDC team, I'm just going to jump in here for a moment. We will be on the call today until noon. I know that SBDC also has regular time set up each day at 3 p.m., correct? Where people can call in to address other specific questions. And for the folks that are on the webinar today, the Pasadena City College SBDC is the closest one to the city of Glendale, in addition to the Bixel Exchange, which is in downtown Glendale, or excuse me, downtown Los Angeles. But I would encourage all of you to continue to monitor the information coming out from the local chambers. The Glendale Chamber of Commerce and the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber of Commerce have done a phenomenal job in providing up-to-date information on available loans, and have also done a good job in promoting the businesses that are still open. I know the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber has been encouraging remote grand openings as well. So anything that we can do as a community to support local and the small businesses, we are here for you. And we've had the mayor here on the call and webinar the entire time. And I would again like to extend the offer that if you, small businesses, if you can share with us your pain points, we as the city will continue to let our congressional leaders know what it is that you're experiencing. So with that, I just wanted to turn it back over to the SBDC, but I do know that we have some callers who are dropping off. So please continue to follow all of the chambers as well as the @Choose Glendale site for up-to-date information.
Well, one of the points that I'd like to emphasize that we do more than just provide details on financing options. If you have a business that's impacted, especially by the stay at home, stay safe, if you've got a product or service to promote, there may be ways to do that more efficiently and effectively and your SBDC advisor can probably work with you to come up with a strategy to help you get some things started while we have to all work remotely if we're not an essential business. And there may be some things you can do, maybe having an independent, knowledgeable advisor like one of our SBDC consultants could be just the person you need to help you think outside of the box and come up with other strategies. We shouldn't let this situation control us. We should aggressively attack it and identify ways in which we can work around this impediment.
Well put. And I will find that iBank. It's at California, ca.gov. If you Google, there's a question about the iBank. Christina, if you Google iBank California or ca.gov, you'll find it.
And
COVID group.
and CDC loans, it would the CDC program is under cdcloans.com. cdcloans.com. And that's for emergency relief for small business loans.
Mr. Mayor, it does look like there's a question for you here regarding some of the available resources and funding programs for its residents, such as low-income folks, seniors, or people who are the main breadwinners but who are staying at home during this time. Would you like to address any of the resources available?
Yes, first, we are targeting anybody who does not have who's a low-income people. They can get help from our water and power department. They will deposit $150 in their account to help them with the bills which they have, and there is no income. There's a phone number for it, but I don't remember at this moment to provide. However, for the residents of Glendale, Glendale Water and Power will help you by $150. I want to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, and we will provide that number out to everybody on this call. So if there are not any more questions that are popping up, I think this would be a good time to conclude all of our comments. And John, we will be able to provide some of the answers to the questions that we maybe did not get to in a follow-up email to everybody on this call, correct?
Yes, and the 3 p.m. call, daily call that you mentioned is also a great resource. And then, of course, we're available if there are additional questions, Jennifer, you can send them over and I'll knock them out as fast as I can and turn them around.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everybody on the call today. Thank you to the SBDC team. Thank you to the mayor, to the Glendale Chamber, to the Montrose Verdugo City of Commerce, or City Chamber of Commerce, excuse me, and the Verdugo Job Center. And of course, thank you to all of the businesses. Please know that we are learning as we're going as well. If there are ways in which we can improve the webinars or topics, you can feel free to send those comments over directly to us, to me directly at jhiramoto@glendaleca.gov. And we are really here to support you and really hoping that we can all get through this better than we started. So with that, thank you very much, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, and best of luck to everyone.
Thank you.
Glendale, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your information.
Very welcome. Larry, Laura, thank you. Always appreciated.